Welcome everybody to the October Board of Health meeting for Thurston County. I'm your host, Robin Vasquez. I want to call this meeting to order. It's 3:50. It's a little late. We had some technical difficulties, but welcome tuning in remotely. Oh, look, and we've got someone tuning in remotely.
Commissioner Edwards.
Welcome, Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, you can hear me, huh?
We can hear you. We just started.
Thank you. I think there might be others that we're having a hard time getting on, just so you know.
Yeah, we were having some technical challenges.
Okay.
Large come. Well, let's start off with an approval of the agenda as posted. Could I get a motion to approve our agenda?
I move to approve our agenda as posted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of the agenda as posted? Hearing none, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of approving our agenda as posted, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, we have an approved agenda. How about approval of our September 10th meeting minutes? Can I get a motion?
So moved, second.
Got it. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion of the September 10th meeting minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, our meeting minutes for September have been approved. Thank you. We're going to move on now to agenda item number 2, which is our proclamation for this month. And we have a proclamation on World Homeless Day. Do board members have it ready to go? Ray, would you be willing to start us off?
Sure. World Homeless Day. Whereas October 10th, 2024 is World Homeless Day, which was established to raise awareness of the needs of the people experiencing homelessness and promote work in the local communities to alleviate the suffering of those experiencing it. And
whereas over 650,000 people in the U.S. are experiencing sheltered or unsheltered homelessness, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2023 Homeless Assessment Report, with those who identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, experience homelessness at a higher rate. And
whereas in the 2024 Washington State point-in-time count, an estimated 31,040 people were experiencing either sheltered or unsheltered homelessness, reflecting a 26% rise in homelessness since 2022. The Thurston County point-in-time report identified 864 individuals in January 2024, marking a 14% increase compared to 2023. And
whereas changing circumstances can disrupt family dynamics in individuals' lives, leading to financial hardships that often result in homelessness, many low-income individuals and families face significant difficulties finding affordable and adequate housing. Job loss, unemployment, high healthcare costs, and other challenges such as domestic violence, addiction, or disability can further strain their ability to secure necessities and can make it difficult to escape the cycle of homelessness. And
whereas everyone has a role to play in supporting unhoused individuals and families, including neighborhood associations, faith-based groups, community partners, businesses, nonprofits, policymakers, and concerned citizens, it is essential that we collectively engage in efforts to combat poverty and support those in need.
Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Health hereby proclaims October 10th as World Homeless Day in Thurston County and encourages all residents to demonstrate their commitment to advocating for human rights by spreading awareness to increase efforts dedicated to ensuring adequate housing, healthcare, and access to meaningful work. Adopted this 8th day of October 2024, Board of Health.
thank you. I think we have a guest speaker coming to talk to us today. Welcome.
Great, thank you. I'm Tom Webster. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Thurston County's Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention. So on behalf of Thurston County's Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention and all the local service providers who work tirelessly to support those experiencing homelessness in our community, I'd like to thank the Board of Health for its proclamation regarding World Homeless Day. I wanted to share a few highlights of the work our community is doing to address homelessness. In Thurston County, initiatives like Anchor Community Initiative and Built for Zero play a significant role in addressing homelessness by providing dedicated workspace and capacity for educational support and community integration opportunities. These initiatives drive our mission to reduce chronic and veteran homelessness to functional zero and to end youth homelessness in Thurston County. Through the creation of a countywide quality by name list supported by timely input of service provisions and housing inflow and outflow data, Thurston County has shown its dedication to housing first principles and the belief that by working together as a community, we can make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. These initiatives have also increased collaboration between service providers, which includes coordinated outreach to encampments across service organizations and jurisdictions, case conferencing between service providers for personalized and effective case management, and countywide data collection and analysis to better inform homeless response programs and activities. Due largely to funding received under the state's rights of way or encampment resolution program since 2023, our community has created an additional 168 enhanced shelter units and 89 new permanent supportive housing units, with another 64 permanent supportive housing units opening at Lotus Court this week. Thurston County is also intentional about centering the voices of people with lived experience. The Lived Experience Housing Steering Committee is comprised of individuals who have lived experience of homelessness, in addition to racial and ethnic identities that are overrepresented among those accessing the homeless crisis response system. This committee gives voice to those underrepresented where decisions about housing are made. And finally, we just encourage all residents of Thurston County to support and acknowledge the expertise of our homeless service providers and just show compassion towards all persons experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
I did have a question. I thank you so much for your work and thank you for being here. I am curious about your relationship with law enforcement in relationship to homelessness, and are you working with them in any capacity, and how that affects your work?
Yeah, so our office directly does not have a formal relationship with law enforcement. I would say we occasionally have kind of interaction. Our service providers do more regularly interact, especially when there's concerns around an encampment. There's usually good coordination and communication with law enforcement prior to whether there needs to be a closure of an encampment or if there's concerns. So our service providers do work pretty closely with law enforcement. And each jurisdiction, especially Lacey and Olympia, have mobile outreach teams. You know, there are more formal communications between outreach providers and law enforcement.
Thank you. Would you say that if I were to be looking for like a framework of best practices and how to, as a law enforcement person or a law enforcement adjacent person, how to engage encampments and homeless people, unhoused folks, would I directly contact a service provider, or would you guys have access to something like that?
I would recommend reaching out to us. We, there's lots of resources from the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, and there's other resources. Department of Commerce has also some best practice resources out there. Service providers also likely have some of that information as well. So happy to work with you to identify whatever resources may be appropriate.
Thank you.
See Commissioner Menser and then Commissioner Mejia and then Dr. Harvey.
I know there was concern in the community when the Supreme Court did its ruling and on the Grants Pass case, and I see the encampment resolution program with weekly meetings. Who attends those meetings, and would that be something that would those types of issues be discussed in that forum?
Yeah, so that is under the state's, what used to be known as the Rights of Way program, and they've changed names to it's now known as the Encampment Resolution Program. So those meetings are really between our state partners and local partners with around the funding that comes from the state under that Encampment Resolution Program. So it is not addressing those larger policy issues such as Grants Pass. So I attend, people from our staff. I attend those meetings. And then our contracted Interfaith Works, Olympia Mutual Aid Partners, City of Lacey, City of Olympia, and then our state partners, as well as several other local providers.
If there were to be a discussion about a procedure or process for a camp closure or something of that nature, would that probably go to the Regional Housing Council first?
Yeah, probably. At that point, there have not been specific conversations from a regional point on how to address Grants Pass. There's been some, I would say, preliminary kind of discussions. Is this something for the Regional Housing Council to address? How would they do so? But it's been at a very, I would say, preliminary level and not something that's reached the full our Regional Housing Council yet for discussion.
I'm going to skip the queue for just a brief question, follow-up. Is there funding accessible or distributable through the Encampment Resolution Program, which used to be called the Right-of-Way Initiative? Because I know that the City of Lacey received a substantial amount of funding through the Right-of-Way Initiative, and that resulted in Maple Court, our ability to open up Maple Court as a shelter. So is there still state funding attached to the Encampment Resolution Program?
Yes, so currently we have state funding that goes through June 30th of 2025. We are anticipating in the upcoming state legislative session that there'll be additional funding for that to continue the operations. I think there's a question at what level of funding that will be provided and whether it will be sufficient to continue operations of all the kind of programs, both shelters and permanent supportive housing that have been created under the Rights of Way program. But there is anticipated to be additional funding, yes.
And if I may, that one of the shared legislative priorities that is coordinated by the chamber and includes all the jurisdictions is actually some funding to be able to support Lehigh in the conversion of Maple Court to permanent supportive housing.
That's great. Sounds like a lot of us are on the same page. We need that. Commissioner Mejia, then Dr. Harvey, and Commissioner Fournier, I see your hand as well.
I just wanted to add that our team here in Thurston County also works very closely with our Behavioral Health Association, and so they are, there's a lot of coordination that happens there quite a bit, especially when it comes to the law enforcement piece. We have different, we have our lead team, and then that also coordinates with all of you, especially when it comes to tapping into those resources that are so needed.
Yeah, thank you.
Then my question was, do we have any data on the current state of students enrolled in schools who are experiencing homelessness or families with children?
Yeah, as part of our point in time count, we do work with kind of local school districts to collect that information. I don't have that in front of me, so I can get that for you. But we do have information. It's collected a little bit differently for students. The definition of homelessness is different for students under McKinney-Vento than it is kind of within the point in time. So we do collect that information. I don't have that data right with me, but happy to provide that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fournier?
Yeah, I think everybody was kind of already hitting at it, but I have a lot of concern or worry that with the changing legal landscape and requirements no longer being in place that were in place, the funding is going to quickly dry up for all these programs that we've created. And who is tracking that? Is that Tom? Are you tracking that acutely? There seems to be a cliff, potentially a cliff that we're headed to.
Yeah, so we are in regular contact with, especially through that weekly ERP meeting. We're talking to our state partners about what they're looking to do. And so during the legislative session, we work with the Washington State Association of Counties and their lobbyists to be informed about what's going on. So we do try to keep track of funding levels. Yes.
I think it's not.
Is there?
Oh, go ahead.
Is there any kind of greater assessment that we could get? Kind of like a look. Maybe the RHC is talking about it, already has it, but some holistic look at what all we've done, what all our obligations are, and what the the time frame is with those?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do, the Regional Housing Council put together a kind of a one-page or two-page flyer of the things that have done. We do have a good handle on the budget, but we could do some work to kind of pull that together as part of, as Rob stated, as part of the legislative agenda for the RHC, we could put that together so it's as robust as possible for that ask.
Okay, and I'd love to be briefed on that, or maybe the whole commission.
Yeah, I think that would be great if you could send that out to the board. Commissioner McCann?
I just wanted to add that it is something that the Regional Housing Council has discussed multiple times. That's why it's one of our top legislative priorities. The state gave us this funding to address the present needs, but not the ongoing funding that is required. And so the discussion is now to keep this new places in place, right? We're gonna have to take away from other places that, we were supporting. And it's been an ongoing request from the legislator that, they have to really keep funding these homes, because if not, we're going to end up where we were. And one of the statistics that I was very impressed with as we were going through the whole right-of-way cleanup was that the jungle grew twice its size than what it was originally, just through these right-of-way cleanups. And now we're having to deal with the impacts of that as well. So there's been a lot of discussion on those funding necessities. Yes, it is a cliff, I agree, but I think everyone's very aware of it. And so that's why we keep requesting those needs to the governor and to the legislator.
Well, I think that it helps that the jurisdictions, the different boards and organizations that are focused on reducing homelessness in Thurston County, we're all kind of pointed in the same direction on this, right? Like the Regional Housing Council, the Encampment Resolution Program, the City of Lacey, the county, the City of Olympia, we all agree we need sustained supportive funding for this, because just in Lacey, we built, we established Maple Court. The plan was that would be 120 units of long-term supportive housing. That is not what it is today. It is a shelter, because we didn't get the other half of the funding to convert the units so that it can really be long-term supportive housing. And we need additional support and funding to be able to do that. So we have, people are concerned that we have a failed model, I think. I've heard that from folks saying, it didn't work. You built Maple Court, it didn't work. We're not finished yet. We're only halfway there. So we need to be able to finish to do what we committed to do with the community and provide that kind of support.
But what if that funding isn't coming?
Well, that's a kind of a scary question, I think, a good question, and we need to be asking our legislators how they can help us follow through on the commitment, because I think not just in Lacey, but across the county, we made a series of commitments in good faith, because the state said we need to all work together to address this issue. And so we invested, we committed to things like Maple Court and other housing programs, but we really need the state to come through for us.
So Robin, what is the legislative funding timeline? Do they have a plan, or did they just give a chunk of money?
The Right-of-Way Initiative allocated money to address some of the encampments that were in the right-of-ways. And for instance, Lacey, again, took some of that funding to be able to convert a hotel into, right now, shelter, about 120 units of shelter. But we don't know yet. We have funding through June of 25, and we've got a legislative session coming up where I'm guessing this is going to be a hot topic. But we won't know for sure that we have funding past June of 25 until April of 25 at the end of the legislative session when we get the final budget.
So back to Wayne's initial question, I believe, is do we know what that figure is to get us through the next 3 years, next 2 years? And who is leading that?
That's a great question. I don't have the figure off the top of my head. But...
Yeah, I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but we have that information. We can look at our current contracts. And I'll say we actually met with Low Income Housing Institute today to talk about their plan for conversion of Maple Court from enhanced shelter to permanent supportive housing. It was originally designed as a 2 to 4 year time frame. We knew it was going to be an enhanced shelter to start with a plan to convert that. The Regional Housing Council has awarded a little over $1 million to support that conversion. Lehigh has indicated that they intend to submit an application next year to the Housing Trust Fund for the additional funding to support that conversion.
And that's through the Department of Commerce,
That's
right?
through the Department of Commerce. They also relayed that they've had conversations with the state. They're also concerned about that ongoing operations funding. The state has some money for the right-of-way kind of going forward. I don't want to say the exact number because I don't remember it exactly, but the state is requesting full funding for the right-of-way. So there will be partial funding to continue right-of-way initiative funding. And so what the request of the legislature from Department of Commerce is for full funding so they can fully fund all the operations of the existing projects across the state.
Thank you. I saw County Manager Hernandez and then Commissioner Fournier, and then we should probably move on from this topic, even though we could probably all continue talking about it because it is a very interesting public health topic.
I think Tom summed it up. Getting an inventory of ongoing costs, because the program's only as good as the ability to support it ongoingly. And, you know, one could argue you make an initial investment, but you don't have the funds to do the ongoing support. It creates a bit of a unmet expectation that then becomes problematic. So glad to hear that that's something that's being considered.
No bridges to nowhere. Commissioner Fournier?
Yeah, I want to echo that. I have great concern that funding is not coming since the legal landscape has changed, the motivations have changed, and there's no shortage of needs out there, whether it be the schools or public defense standards. I mean, everybody's going to be asking, and there's no longer the legal motivation, and the right-of-way stuff has almost made it out of sight, out of mind now. So this is a looming issue that I don't want us to not be in front of and be realistic about.
Yes.
This could be potentially something that our policy subcommittee could consider, because as the concerns have been brought up, who knows what's going to happen after June 2025.
Yeah, it's like the same story again and again, where there's money to fund capital things, and then there's no money for ongoing expenses, and whether it be whatever little pocket of things we're working on, it's the same story every time, and I'm scared on this one.
Thank you. And thank you for the suggestion that the policy committee take this up. All right. Well, normally this is the moment in the agenda when we would take a photo. You ready to take a photo?
Yep. And we've got a couple staff from our office to join us as well. We invited our providers, but unfortunately the Department of Commerce is having a large provider meeting in Wenatchee that started today, so providers could not.
You're out there
Tom, do
doing
you
the
want to
work.
introduce?
Yeah, so we have Alex Purse, who's our affordable housing manager, and Elisa Sparkman, who's our communications director, and then Renee, are you going to come up? Anyone else coming up?
All right. Well, folks online, hold tight for maybe 2 minutes. We'll take a photo. We'll be right back. Here, you hold this in front of everybody.
Okay.
Open it up.
I love it. It's cold in this building.
All right. We're coming back. Okay. We take our seats again. The next item on our agenda is opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment? Do we have anybody not signed up for public comment but wishing to speak? Anybody online? All right, well, seeing none, we're moving on from public comment. Next item, we have our annual pesticide use report. Presentation from Kimberly and maybe Mark. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Kimberly Graham with the Solid and Hazardous Waste Program in the Environmental Health Division.
And I am the retiring chair of the PVMAC board. I've been on the board 11 years, 10 years as the chair of the board. So I've enjoyed my time there, and I think we've made quite a bit of inroads into invasive species in Thurston County as well as pesticide usage. We actually have a stricter pesticide use in Thurston County than we do in the state. We have state okayed pesticides that we will not use in Thurston County, just because we figure they're more hazardous and there are better products out there that we can use safer for people. Their half-lives are shorter, whatever it is, the impact will be less, but it'll still get the same job done. I'm going to keep my comments short today because if you have any questions on the actual report, I'd rather go through those first. And then if I can have 2 minutes at the end for comments that I've seen through my 10 years, 11 years now, I'd love to just give those to the board for them just to have something to digest a little bit. So if you have any questions on the report itself. That never happens.
Right, I miss you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We're one of those very quiet little groups of volunteers that, just nobody ever sees. I was the state president of the Washington State Beekeepers when I was asked to join the board. And we've had people who have are pesticide appliers. We've had people from Fish and Wildlife. We've had people who have actually engineered and built pesticides and are now retired and are on the board, are sitting on the board right now. And these people are just a wealth of knowledge. A lot of them are much deeper into the pesticides than what we get into. So their actual ability to get into the conversations is really stellar, and it's quite amazing. And when you go through, usually what I get, and I'll just hit a couple of really quick little highlights. If you even say just see the front page, and it absolutely looks like a staircase. It looks like it's all over the place. And there are several reasons for our pesticide usage going up and down and up and down. Is sometimes there are certain windows for application, and there are certain windows for them to get applications to us for use. If those two things don't line up, they don't get the ability to apply that year, and they have to wait for the following year. Some things are every other year. They basically apply it, especially some of the aquatics they're using, and they want to see what the knockdown is the following year, and then they will readjust how they're applying it and what they're applying it to and the time of year they're applying it. So, yes.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask, we have a lot of new members since the the last time you were presenting. And so I think that doing just a breakdown, just of things for new members maybe to look at, or of the report would be helpful.
Sure.
And so maybe can we start there, and then if there are additional questions on that, then move through it.
Absolutely. Well, there are several different, Central Service Division actually is the folks that take care of your buildings. If it's owned by the county, they have a hand in it. Public Works certainly is stormwater and transportation both. So if it's something to do with, we have something growing in the stormwater runoffs that is a invasive species, they need to know how to handle it. We actually have people who are staff who do apply pesticides, who are county employees. In some places, like the work, the solid waste, they actually have a outside company that comes and deals with their particular group of problems that they have there. More rodent than anything else. And then the master gardeners also have a plot out there, and they do almost everything manually. They don't use any type of pesticides or any other type of applications out there. So they run a completely clean garden out there, which I think is kind of a great way to kind of PR not only master gardeners, but also the fact that there's great ways to maintain your garden where you don't have to dump a ton of chemicals on it to make it, decent. One of the historic sites, Glacier Heritage, is somebody who comes before us on a fairly regular basis. And their charge is to try to keep Glacier Heritage as a prairie. And as pretty much everybody is, I think, aware, prairie is a man-made object. It's not naturally occurring. So basically, we need to burn it. We need to chemically treat it. We need to manually pull stuff. And once we get it, I do not believe they've gotten to maintenance at this point. They are still literally going through the steps to get this to a natural prairie state with native prairie plants. They have cross-contamination problems there that is just, I can't even wrap my head around it. They have large plots of land on both sides of them, which is unmanaged properties. And so, of course, they have just a whole host of different weeds. And as soon as the wind blows, we're off to the races again, and Heritage is contaminated once again. The other thing with Heritage that has always kind of made me a little nervous is there actually is on their southeast side, there is actually a stream that runs the length of Heritage as well. And so what you're putting on there, depending on its half-life, is probably going to end up in the stream, which is the last thing you want. But they have tried to do things manually, and they have a monstrous volunteer team. I think when Scotch Broom, when they originally took it over, I think they hand cleared 160 acres by hand. I can't even wrap my head around that, but they did. And they've continued on taking out invasive species and then planting native species in its place. But I guess my concern with this is even when you get to maintenance, you're still going to have fires. You're still going to have to use defoliants. There's still things that you're going to have to do to keep this going. And it's not a public site. It is owned by the county, but except for Prairie Day, that's the only day I actually know that the people of the county are asked to come and visit it. So from that standpoint, I'm not sure if we're doing ourselves any good with this particular program. And I know that there's a lot of people that love the native species and so on and so forth. And so you have to be able to weigh that and consider what's the best for the county and certainly that plot of land by itself. And then the other, let's see, work, we already hit that. Glacier Heritage, there is actually several pages here and really nice maps. So if you go through, it'll basically show you with color what the high quality they've already treated and is now in native species, as opposed to low quality, which is, it still has a long way to go to actually get squared away.
Sounds like the effort of a generation.
It really is. It really is. And it's going to have to continue, because turning your back on it, it'll be woody in 5 years and you'll lose it. So the idea of what it originally was supposed to be and where we are now, I don't know if it's achieving it's
not self-sustaining yet, and it
No.
won't be for many years. I did
Right.
want to make sure that you had time to provide us with your sort of wrap-up comments.
Certainly. That, actually, Heritage was one of them. And also that we now have a Lakes Division, which is separate from us. And they're doing wonderful, wonderful things. We still work in tandem together as far as application is concerned. But we have several lakes that we oversee, and I think probably the lakes are probably the hardest thing, because once you release something in a lake, you've lost complete control of it. It's not like spraying or putting in a granular defoliant in a particular area to get rid of a noxious weed. Once you put it in the water's going to do with it what it wants. And so it's kind of a little bit of a scary proposition working with hydronics and pesticides. Yes.
Real quick, so it seems like there's two issues that jump out on the first graph on page 1.
Yeah.
One of them is obviously the crazy, up and down at the tail end of the last 4 years, and that seemed to be what you were addressing. But there's also, prior to 2017 versus after 2017, there seems to be just a massive shift in amount of active ingredient used. Nothing, 500 pounds and below versus 1,500 and up.
Yeah, and that's actually a shift in the pesticide itself. So the things that they were using were a little bit more on the hazardous side before then. So it was their uses and the amount of active ingredient they were allowed to use was much less.
So we're using more poundage of less potent chemicals.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the pound is not a good metric to really go by, because it's the concentration changes.
Sadly enough, it's the only thing that we have, because it's actually apples and oranges, because we were using a really nasty pesticide, and now we've got one that's much safer for humans. It has a much shorter half-life. It breaks down much quicker, so on and so forth. So from one side to the other, it was like, we didn't want to do this because it was unsafe, but there were things that we were mandated by the state to do. And then it was, we can do more of this with a different pesticide or defoliant, whatever, because it's safer and it won't be around as long. So that's why some of those numbers are going up and going down.
Thank you.
I think probably the only other comment that I had was in our, the Elm Highway project, where we have the grass median and the trees and all the rest of that stuff. I'm not exactly sure with all the amount of upkeep that takes and the liquid weeding that goes on there and a lot of other things. If in planning in the future, if we should be trying to do things that are just little touches of nature here on your highway, as opposed to things that really are going to last the test of time, because, we did plant trees in the middle of those, and we know that those tree roots are gonna take up those roads, and we're gonna have to cut the trees down, we're gonna have to repair the roads. And then on top of it all, we're out there applying defoliant and planting plants that constantly need care and upkeep, so you have staff on it as well. So there may be some of the planning going forward might be a little bit better if you did a double barrier with brickwork in the middle and called it a day, so, yes.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your 10-year of service. And I want to ask an important question because you said that Thurston County is better than the state. And I'm a representative from Squaxin Island Tribe, and we take great pride into doing things and using alternative pesticides. We have Salish Cliffs, a salmon certified championship golf course.
Yes.
And so we really walk the talk in regards to that. But my question is, how do we continue to go in the right direction? And who makes those decisions? I fear with you retiring after a long tenure of doing the right thing, we want to continue those best practices and use alternative to pesticides, so.
It's kind of difficult, I think, probably from the standpoint that why I'm retiring basically is I am not up to my neck in pesticides and reports, not anymore. I'm a dinosaur. I probably haven't done more than maybe 50 hours a year in reading and getting online and keeping up with things. I think the other thing that I'm kind of concerned about, and I don't know how to fix it, is the fact that when we originally have a pesticide come out, the pesticide company and the state and a whole bunch of other hands in the pie say, you know, this is the level of impact for this particular use, how long it's going to live in the environment, so on and so forth. And that statically sits there. 15 years later, we still haven't looked back and gone, are those numbers all still right? Did we miss something? And those are the things that kind of bother me about the things that we do, because we're literally putting stuff out into the atmosphere that nobody ever expected us to put out in the atmosphere. So I think you have to be very delicate, you know, and very deliberate about what you do and don't do when it comes to the earth, because it's only going to take so much more abuse before it's going to rear up and bite us in the rear end, to be perfectly honest. And I don't want to see that happen statewide or in Thurston County. And strangely enough, or maybe not, we're one of the very few PFMAC boards that operate in the state of Washington. There's a handful of us at best, and most of us copy our homework, which, you know, I'm very touched by, and I think it's great, but I think each county actually should have its own functioning PFMAC board. But you guys are covered. I'm leaving great people behind. I do have 3 vacancies, which I know originally the Department of Health or the county commissioners would put forth people to fill. And Kim can tell you, we actually have a breakdown of like landowners who are farmers and people in the business and so on and so forth. So we try to keep a really broad net as far as who's at the table so that we get as many people as possible with different views without having a ton of people at the table. So Kim can keep you up on that as well.
Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is board composition and terms. Looks like Rob Gelder is coming to the stage. Welcome.
I've been following gold.
Significant
When you're out of
glance.
town, when the agenda it gets put together, that you kind of lose a little control. I did pull out the whiteboard. Here's the mouse in case, because we did lose, when we had our hiccup with Zoom, we did lose Commissioners Edwards and Fournier. So can you double check?
They have been sent emails and messaged on Teams. And I also messaged their executive assistants.
Well, we will do our best, but thank you all. This has been a topic of conversation for a number of years. A couple of our commissioners in the room have been living it for a long time. When the state law changed, pretty much in the midst of COVID, to create the expansion of local boards of health. There was at the time a small little loophole. If you had a community advisory group, you then didn't necessarily have to change your board composition, but if you did not, you were forced to basically expand. And what they wanted was that balance. This was basically a governor requested piece of legislation, as I recall. And that was to create a balance between the elected officials and community members. At that time, we had 3 county commissioners. And so the requirement was to have 3 community members that represented certain aspects of the continuum, along with a tribal representative. So that was 4, and then you had the 3 county commissioners. You have to have an equal number. So we added a rotational city seat at that point in time and went from 3 to 8. And then a little over a year ago, the Board of County Commissioners expanded to 5, which then as we all know, because we all went through that, and some of you went through that recent recruitment and appointment, and so we are now at 12. The board was successful in working with our local legislative delegation last legislative session to amend the RCW to offer a little flexibility. We're the only county apart from Spokane County that has 5 county commissioners. They happen to be over 400,000, so they automatically became a board of 5 versus it going to the vote of the people to go to 5, which is just more background, as not necessarily germane to the board composition, but they do have a health district. So when they were 5, it didn't necessarily impact them, and the solution that was reached in RCW does not affect the Spokane County either. So this does allow the Board of County Commissioners to change the number of county commissioners that sit on the Board of Health to some number other between 5 and 1. So there has to be at least 1 county commissioner on the Board of Health. But the question then before the board today is that we are having a conversation around potential configurations of the Board of Health that can be recommended to the Board of County Commissioners for their deliberations and potential implementation. So, that is a little bit of the background right now. The document that was part of your packet was an attempt to really try to, get the juices flowing, to really kind of say, okay, if the bare minimum under state law is 8, because we have to have the 3 community members and the tribal representative, that means we have to have 4 electeds to mirror that. So that is our bare minimum with the Board of Health. And then the other bookend that we have is our current state of 12. And then we threw in the mix just for some discussion was the potential of some configuration for a group of 10. So really that is the background, and would be happy to see if Jen has anything else that she would like to offer in terms of background or commentary, and then we can start a conversation.
No, I'd be happy to hear from everybody. I'll chime in.
Leonard, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I know, we're just trying to get the other commissioners back on line, because I think we had a disruption.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are not able to join.
Clark, doesn't Clark have 5 commissioners?
Clark County. They're a charter county though.
So they don't have to worry about the Board of Health?
I don't know. I don't know. Jen, do you know whether or not they're a district or a department?
I believe Clark is a district.
So that's really kind of one of the nuances with districts. There's a lot more latitude, and there's Commissioner Fournier. There's a lot more latitude locally, and it's not necessarily tied as a county department.
Welcome back, Commissioner Fournier. We are talking about board composition.
Thank you.
We're still working to get Commissioner Edwards back online, but let me just open it up for thoughts, comments from board members. Do you have a preferred option? So we have the current constitution of the board up there at the top in the background section, and then the recommendations list 4 different options.
Could I just say as a predicate that the commissioners would have the ability, even if it chose an option that was smaller, we'd have the ability to phase that in so that no one would get like booted off the board. So you don't necessarily need to worry about that. I think that would be the preference of the board, even if we were going to reduce it, that we would let people term out or something like that. So it's not like, okay, who's out of here, you know?
My sense of the goal of this activity is not that we're just gonna start ejecting people off
No,
of the board.
I just want to say that because I wouldn't want that I think we should be thinking about the right structure, not our own self-interest in wanting to serve. It should be about thinking at a higher level, what's the best structure for the board.
And, right, to that point, I think whatever ends up being the direction, there is a time frame for that implementation, and we can look at what a transition plan might be, because this is based in county code, so there is a legislative process just to change that before anything could be implemented. So it would take a little while.
My one comment would be back to the commissioners and, you know, what do you think your workload is and how do you best serve Thurston County? And if I heard it correctly, Robert said you could have 1 to 5. And so I'd look to you to kind of give us some insight. Do you think as a 5-member, do you need all 5 members? And what better serves you as a commission to serve Thurston County in those other duties that you have?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess,
Sure, we have our own.
well, I'll add a little bit of historical context, I guess, from because I went up to the state and really lobbied for this very hard. And kind of the idea of this was when it was brought forward, staff brought this forward to the board, was if the Board of Health grows too much, then it's scheduling, and there were all these other intricacies of it. And so I went with that idea and that mindset, right? And that's what I was basically lobbying for and testifying in front of the legislator to let us do this. It was in a way to reduce the number of the Board of Health. And so kind of, I'm from that mindset of okay, this was the intent. This is why we went up to the state and requested this change, was not to have the 5 boards, but to reduce the amount of Board of Health members. And so for me, I guess I'll just be very blunt, right? I think 3 county commissioners on a Board of Health would be appreciated. I'm kind of leaning to kind of the previous format where it was just 3 Board of County Commissioners and 1 city representative, 1 tribal member, and then 3 community members. Just kind of because that's what we were advocating for beforehand. I know that we just went through this whole recruitment process and we brought in a whole another slate of valuable voices, right? And so I think this is the kind of one of the reasons we wanted to have this discussion with the Board of Health and kind of hear everyone's thoughts on this.
I see Commissioner Fournier's hand raised. And then
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in, and I appreciate Commissioner Mejia's comments. I wasn't I don't have all the history that she has, but I've been involved in a lot of the discussions, and I appreciate the intent. For me, 3 is a great number, and it also, I think it allows commissioners to kind of have focuses and specialize on things, and so there's value in that. And for me, I'm also sensitive to making sure that there's equal representation throughout the county in all kinds of different ways. And I don't think I would advocate for any type of system that would heavily place representation in North Thurston County over South Thurston County. So I'm hoping that we can find a solution that kind of, shows representation all over the board.
thank you.
I pretty much agree with Commissioner Mejia. I mean, definitely the Board of Health was placed by the legislature in the hands of the county because we have the jurisdiction. And so I do think it's appropriate for the county to have a major role. But we don't need all 5 commissioners on the Board of Health, because that really aces out cities and expands it beyond. We went from 3 to 8, it was a big deal. So 3, I think, is good. I guess, yeah, I mean, the 10 piece, I'm in favor of 8 or 10. I think that I could be talked into the 10. 8, the 8, that's 3113 there, the first, that's really, it was Commissioner Mejia said, that really just, that does what the law was intended, like gives us the flexibility to put us back where we were when we had to expand from 3 to 8. That's all we were trying to do. Like we wanted to get that working and work with that number. And before we were even able to get anywhere, we added the 2 commissioners, which then just expanded it 50% again. So it felt a little unwieldy. I mean, the board's working pretty good right now, so it's kind of like, I'm a lot more, I felt really strongly about this, a year ago. I feel less strongly about it now. I could be talked into something different, but I do think the original 8 is a big solid amount. The 3 community members, the tribal representative, having a city. I don't have a strong opinion about how we manage the city spot, but it is a county function, in my opinion. So I'm not really interested in diluting that to where it's 1 county commissioner and a whole bunch of city people and a whole bunch of community members. I mean, I think that's out of line with boards of health and how they're supposed to be structured, but I think this is a good change. I was for expansion. I was very much for expansion back when it was just the 3 commissioners. So I really appreciate the bigger Board of Health. It's just a question of how far to go.
Before, I wanted to give Commissioner Edwards an opportunity to weigh in also, but I know we do have another meaty item on our agenda. So after Commissioner Edwards says his piece, I'm going to start trying to drive us toward a recommendation. So I'm going to, while you're speaking, Commissioner Edwards, I'm going to use the whiteboard to just put our options on.
Madam Chair, I mean, if I can, yes, there is a meaty topic as well. There is nothing that's driving a recommendation today. If the board, I mean, this could be an introduction to the board, and you all can go home and noodle on it a little bit more, and we can bring it back.
But we could make a decision today.
We could make a recommendation today.
Right. Yes.
Yes, and I think in terms of making a recommendation, I would ask the Board of Health, now that we've adopted as well into our bylaws, a subcommittee structure, knowing, the number of people and active participation in subcommittees, just to keep that in mind as well.
Not to lose sight of that, yes. Commissioner
Okay.
Edwards? Yep.
Am I on?
You are.
Okay. Now, I got cut off here a little bit ago from the meeting, so I believe I've missed out. I was just about to ask my question about pollinators to prior presenter, but I guess I'll get that another day, maybe. Anyway, I wondered, did Wayne as well get knocked off at the same time I did? Has he been able to participate?
Yes, our Zoom link shut down, so we had to establish a new one, and hence the addition, the new link.
So, am I the only one that got back on?
No, Wayne is on as well.
Oh, is he? Was he able to express his concern? That's what I was going to ask.
Yes.
Okay, well, I don't know what that was either because I didn't get a chance to talk to him ahead of time. So I guess I kind of like what Rob said because I don't think there's any real urgency that we take an action right now because I believe the Board of Commissioners will make that decision at some point anyway after the recommendation comes from the Board of Health. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so I guess I'm just gonna sit back and pay attention then. Now that I'm back in the meeting, and see what happens.
Okay. Thank you.
I would like to add something to the space just for folks to think about. I'm strongly leaning toward discussion and possible recommendations today. I do not think it would be in our best interest to necessarily make a decision. I would also like to say that keeping in mind community members tend to have access to gray areas that commissioners do not. You just have other bodies of work, or you may be disconnected from. Community members tend to, this is a Board of Health that is volunteer-based in terms of community members. Nobody's being paid to be here. So with that being said, people are dedicated to being here, and they tend to be able to have more time to delve into something like work within a subcommittee or pursuing a specific project that commissioners do not necessarily have the time or access to do. So I would just like to put that out in the atmosphere.
So more community members?
Not necessarily, but just in terms of what we have that we're looking at here, I completely agree that 5 county commissioners is a bit heavy. I think 3 is very reasonable, but I'm wondering if the amount of county commissioners absolutely has to match the community members. For example, is that?
The electeds have to match the community and tribal members. That wasn't quite clear. Right, that's gotta be the balance. So that electeds don't have to all be county commissioners, but they have to be elected individuals.
So it's a suite of commissioners versus city. You don't actually have to have anyone from the city on it, technically. But you have to have a balance of electeds and non-electeds.
I would really like to honor what Commissioner Fournier said as well. Just South County is not always necessarily being as robustly represented. I think that's really important to keep in mind with how we make our decision around this as well.
It feels important to me to have representatives from cities on both the South County and the North County. So that would be 2, but I think it's important.
Well, I guess I'll weigh in on that. That's what I was hoping that would be said, so.
Has the most community.
That would have to be 10 then, if we were gonna keep 3 commissioners. Because you then have 5 elected officials.
Yeah, that's kind of the one that I'm leaning towards, but I definitely want to hear what everybody has to say.
And the other thing that was clear to me during the pandemic, before I was on the Board of Health, but as I was looking across the state at how Board of Health operated, is the healthcare expertise. There have to be healthcare professionals, practitioners.
And that's one of the requirements. That was one of the huge benefits of the expansion of the Board of Health, is that we could incorporate community voice, because elected officials might have expertise in 1 or 2 areas, but they're asked to legislate on everything. And the Board of Health has to make really specific policy decisions on public health topics.
We have no ability in the Board of Health or as a Board of County Commissioners to change that requirement because it's in state law.
No, I was just gonna basically, go through the 3 different buckets of community members that we specifically have to fill.
So we don't have to make a decision today. I'm just doing my thing, trying to facilitate us getting closer to a decision. But is there an option from these 4 options that we have before us that people hate or love? So we have 2 options that would draw us down to 8 members, and 2 options that would reduce the size, 1 option that would reduce the size of the board to 10, and then 1 that would keep it 12, but increase the number of city representatives, keep the number of community representatives the same, and reduce the number of county commissioners.
And all of those options include the tribal seat, correct?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I didn't even put it on here because it's in there, because that's also, I believe that's legislative required. Yes.
There's 2 I hate.
All right.
Since Robin was asking, any ones that keep 5 county commissioners, and then the one that had 3 North County cities. That seemed.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, I don't. Just those 2 options were the ones that I liked the least.
those are the 12.
So would you be in favor of option 2 and option 4?
Are you asking Wayne?
Yeah, I'm asking Wayne, Commissioner Fournier.
The ones that I kind of liked the most was there was the one where there was 3 county commissioners and then 1 city representative anywhere throughout the county. And then the one I liked even more than that was the one that had 3 county commissioners and then a North County city and a South County city and then the community members on the other end.
Yep, so
So I think it was 10.
I'm hearing Commissioner Fournier's support for option 1
and
or option
4.
4.
That's actually what I meant to say. And that's my favorable top 2.
Yeah, those
Hearing
that's my
input.
top 2 as well.
Now I can't get my hand up here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm inclined to go with Wayne's recommendation of, I think it adds up to the 10. That's a north and south with 3 commissioners.
So that would be option 4 in our handout that has 3 county commissioners, 2 cities with rotating representatives from Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and South County, and a tribal representative and 4 community members.
I believe that's right.
Tanzania?
I am, I guess, leaning toward that one a little bit as well. I just also, and I really want to be frank, and I don't want anybody to take it anyway. I want to speak very plainly. I feel like one of the purposes of expanding the board is also to expand the work that the Board of Health does. I'm going to be very honest with you. I go home and I talk to my friends and family and I talk to people that I work with and I say, oh, we made a proclamation for this. And they're like, okay, because nobody knows about it. Nobody's seeing it. Nobody's talking about it. We don't have a huge presence in the community. We're really lacking in some aspects of our social media. We don't have any specific programs that we're sponsoring. I know a lot of this is related to funding, and I know a lot of this is also related to staff and manpower, et cetera. But I feel like immediately taking away bodies of people that can do work here, I'm not sure if I'm ready to just say yes to that. I think the expansion should also be representative of us expanding our presence in the community and really getting out there and doing some events and people recognizing us for the work that we're doing and people being able to actually understand and know what proclamations we're doing. I think I had just even like this is like a work statistic, but we just recently saw that this is specific to women. However, 86% of women under the age of 30 get their news from social media. So that tells you, these are people who are working, these are people who are voting, these are people who are spending a lot of money in their communities to support their families, and they have no idea what we're doing. So it feels like removing bodies, whether it's a commissioner or a community member, from being able to really drive forward the initiatives that we're trying to do. I'm not necessarily ready to do that in this moment. So I really I've been wanting to say that for a while. So I appreciate the opportunity and the floor to do so respectfully.
Thank you. It sounds like you're actually maybe leaning toward either the current constitution of the board or the option that maintains the number of people on the board, but it changes who those people are a little bit. Because that's the 3 commissioners, so there'd be a reduction in the number of commissioners, but an increase in the number of city representatives. Because we do have
Replacing
that
2
other
commissioners
option.
with 2 cities.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Yes.
Well, hold that thought, Commissioner Edwards. Dr. Harper?
Okay.
Yeah, I think having seen it expand and also been in the pandemic with only the 3 county commissioners, I see the value of the expansion. I like the diversity of representation, and I think that really helps us have the right expertise in the room, and like Tanzania says, like the extra work. So I do kind of like the 4th option. which is the extra South County representation and the 4 community members, because that should give you a diversity of input. So, and then that would be able to reduce the commissioner, like how many people have to be here and have that expertise built, and also that support for the county staff with like a diversity of people who can understand what they're doing, I guess.
Well, and I think it was Jen that made the point, but just thinking about how many people we would need to maintain the committee structure. Like, if we went down to 8, it might be more challenging to have 3 committees of 3 or 4 people each, because then multiple people will have to serve on multiple committees.
10 does better.
I will just add that, having worked with boards of health for 22 years, the boards of health that are more successful are the ones with more community members. And if that means city members too, because there are more bodies. And so when I'm looking at like our strategic plan and the fact that the mission statement is supporting the community through all of our various, education policy and all of that. And then innovation was one of our values that we chose in our strategic plan. And so having more members to do that innovative work is certainly a benefit to what the mission of the Board of Health is.
One of the things, I just want to point out that one of the things that's frustrating a little bit is like, this law says, in one place it says you can't have more electeds than non-electeds. I get that. But then in another place in the law, it says the number of non-electeds can't be more than, it's like it goes backwards. So if I'm listening to what you're saying, and that makes a lot of sense, but to get there, then we have to add more electeds, which means more commissioners, which was not the point, or more cities, which sways the balance between county and city, and that's something that I didn't, wasn't really the intent. I mean, not that that's bad necessarily, but that's not what we were trying to accomplish. So it's frustrating that we're kind of in this weird little puzzle box that doesn't give us all the flexibility options that we might want based on your comments and your comments.
What I was hearing from Tanzania was not more. I thought I was hearing like more of a leaning towards option number 4, and I really appreciate the comments that she was making. And to me, that almost seems like a middle ground for some of these discussions.
I to an extent, yes, and that's what's difficult because I wasn't speaking in numbers. I was speaking in the body of work that we have ahead of us. So that's what's difficult, right? So I think what I was saying could kind of fit in different areas as well. But I know that.
The scope of work. I saw Perla raise her hand. I want to make sure she has an opportunity to speak.
I appreciate everything the county commissioners bring to the table. I do feel it is county commissioner heavy, and I feel like the Board of Health is an extension of the county commissioners themselves, and so it would feel a little bit more to have a focus on the public when we come to the Board of Public Health. The Board of Health would be beneficial to have more community members to bring in the actual aspects of what the community is needing or wanting. So, yeah, on that note, I would guess option 4, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't want to shortchange the last topic we have on the agenda.
I could just say a parting thought, because I know all this will come into a recommendation, but as a former county commissioner, I'll put that hat on if I may. And one that served in a district that was different, right? But the nuance there was that board was 10, and there were 4 cities in the county, and we had 1 county commissioner, 4 city mayors. And then 5, we actually had 2 tribal seats because there were 2 tribes in the county and chose to do it that way, and the 3 community members. So there were 10. But with most of the issues that come before the Board of Health, right, those are not jurisdictional issues per se. They are issues that affect the entirety of our community. And so I hear the concern sometime in terms of, is it a jurisdictional thing? But ultimately, for us in Thurston County, the ultimate buck stops with nothing against the Board of Health, but from a financial standpoint and a commitment, that it is the Board of County Commissioners have the fiduciary responsibility. Whoever is an elected that sits on the Board of Health that can make a recommendation of a budget, they're not adopting a budget. This board does not do that, does not have that authority. It goes to the Board of County Commissioners.
So I'm gonna wrap us up. We did not make a decision. And it sounds like folks are gonna noodle on this, but I feel like we got a little closer, right? We have a general sense that maybe we want to consider option 1 and option 4. I didn't hear a lot of love for option 2. If we want to put this on the agenda for December, because we don't have a November meeting, maybe we'll look at options 1, 3, and 4.
So the one thing I'll challenge the group is I see a majority of people that said option 4, and I think it speaks to a lot of the comments. I always ask, why wait? So, because ultimately, it's going to go to the commissioners for their vetting process and decision. So I just throw that out to this group.
You making a motion, Ray?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt and recommend option 4. And feel free to let it die if you're not ready.
Second.
We got a second. Yep.
So there's a motion and a second to recommend option 4, which would maintain 4 community member representatives on the Board of Health, reduce the number of commissioners down to 3, put 2 rotating members from local cities, which would include North County and South County representation, and then 1 tribal member. Any further discussion?
The only comment I have take Wayne's first.
Oh, no, I think that was Commissioner Edwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Am I on?
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, so maybe from a parliamentary procedure process, I'd be inclined to vote for a raised motion. But that doesn't mean that just moves it from here to the Board of Commissioners, and we will still have plenty of time for discussions and input into what might be the best solution. Am I getting, that's the affirmative? I got that right, did I?
That's the process.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, just a comment in regards to what Tanzania said in regards to how we do things. I think sometimes it's not just more people. I think it's the mechanics in which we implement. And so I don't want that to be lost. I think the board should take up those comments because I really believe that is something we should have dialogue and communication and better ourselves. So
Reach the community more.
Mm-hmm.
And just speaking from a county level, communication and how our communication gets beyond the county's sphere of influence is something that we're wrestling with and want to really advance. The commissioners have made an investment in the communications team. I know that we're working with our department communicators, but we believe there's a lot more to do. So when your comments came forward, I thought that they were very astute and well put, because we can take that and use this group and what we're doing as one of the case studies of how do we move the needle to get the word out more.
Thank you. Jen?
One other just slight piece is in the bylaws. It does say that outside community members can be a part of the subcommittees if you so desire. So there is that option to have additional involvement there.
That's great. We could incorporate additional voices even if they're not on the Board of Health itself.
I'll just say I'm leaning toward 10 now. Because of comments you made and because not to have the ability, we've set up the subcommittee structure. I don't want to disrupt that. And the points you made, I think were valid. So I think I'm comfortable.
You've been persuaded.
I've been persuaded. Well, and then of course, Commissioner Fournier in South County. I don't want to leave them out either. But those are things that I hadn't completely thought through.
Yeah, thank you, Tanzania, for your comments.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right, well, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of making a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners that we go with option number 4, which is 10 members of the Board of Health, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay.
I'll abstain.
1 abstention. Any other abstentions?
Well, I guess I'm not committed yet myself. I made that perfectly clear. So I guess an abstention is a better way to go. To let the community know that we're not there yet as a board, and we're going to have more input and discussion and welcome more input. So I'll abstain as well.
Thank you. We have 2. Oh, darn it. Oh, we have 2 abstentions. The motion carries. So we will be making a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for further consideration. Fate is in your hands, commissioners. Now, while we work with our colleagues back online, I don't know what the deal is with Zoom today. So sorry, Jacqueline. Thanks for the whiteboard. This was my security blanket during this discussion.
Glad to help.
Did it. Last item on our agenda, well, not the last item, excuse me. Oof, we've got a couple other things. Why did we think we were gonna get through all this?
What time?
6.
Do we have to bump some items off till December?
I wanna get to number 6, and then we might, yes, maybe.
How about number 7? Yeah.
We are a little short on time. Would the Board of Health be willing to consider an amendment to our agenda to push item number 7, our review of 2025 proclamations, to our December meeting agenda?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to move agenda item number 7, determination of 2025 proclamations, to our agenda in December. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, we're shifting number 7. Well, let's talk about number 6, which is our social connectedness and isolation declaration campaign, which has been on the docket for a while, and I'm excited about it.
Very good, thank you. Dr. Den Freiheit, Interim Director of Public Health and Social Services. Just wanted to bring awareness to the packet that was distributed 2 months ago to the Board of Health. It is reintroduced in your packet today. This was put together by our team within the health department to basically describe some of the programs and services that are already going on related to this topic, presenting some of the social media aspects that were part of the request from our community members who came before the board in June. For a media campaign around this, should a declaration be declared. And so it basically goes through what would be the tax on staff, which would be very, very minimal as the work is already being done, but it would give guardrails and parameters around that work that is being done in this broader effort. So the request was to declare social connectedness and or loneliness and isolation a declaration. And there is also a template of that declaration in the packet as well, along with other stats and figures.
All right, so
Take any questions?
this has been before us for a while. I've reviewed it. We had community members come and ask us to do this. I think one of the concerns that I've heard from folks on the board is just, is this going to create a huge drain on the time of the staff of the county? And I think the way that this is structured, the answer to that question is no. Because we'd be leveraging existing programs, existing relationships, leaning in a little bit on social media, but we would not be building a new castle around this emergency declaration.
Can I just add to that? Please. Yeah, one of my concerns in just talking, every time we do a declaration for public health, we put resources into that, right? We put a lot of funding that goes into it. We put staff that go into it. And so my concern just with budgetary constraints is were we going, if we pass this, well, there are no funding requests right now from the organizations that came and requested this, was there going to be a funding request in the future? And it was going to put the board in a very awkward position later on. And so I wanted to be clear on what those guardrails were going to be and making sure that staff also had the capacity in order to carry out some of the measures that they've put in place as well without creating an internal impact.
And to that extent, there was a addendum to the declaration language to cover that potential funding or lack thereof.
Do you folks have additional comments or questions about this? I believe we're looking for action today. Well, hearing none, I would open it up for a motion on the declaration on social connectedness and isolation. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, comments?
So I was doing a quick read, so sorry that I didn't review this, but this gives us not only words, but action. Okay, thank you.
And it's a lot of work, as Jen explained to me, it's a lot of work that the department is doing. What this allows is for them to consolidate and to campaign without any additional resources. It was exciting to see that Dr. Freiheit and her team are being proactive in this effort. This allows a spotlight and taking into consideration Commissioner Mejia's concern that we don't get scrutinized of you did a proclamation and what is the funding going into this. We're saying we don't have additional funding for this, but it's such an important issue that public health in its current resource base can go ahead and move forward and potentially go after grants and competitive funding in the future.
So Jen and her staff have threaded the needle with
And then
this.
I guess I was thinking to Tanzania's point, this would be a way we could volunteer, connect with the community and support them, and it wouldn't cost anything. So, just a thought.
Or invite me. All right, well, there's a motion and a second to adopt the declaration on social connectedness and isolation. Commissioners Fournier and Edwards, you're back with us. We're considering the social connectedness and isolation declaration, and there's a motion and a second. Any final comments before we take a vote?
No.
Not for me. I thought I made the second.
You did. You were back. Excuse me. I just didn't want to leave anybody behind. We've had connectivity issues. I want to leave you out.
Which is perfect for this motion.
Yeah. Apropos, it's like Zoom new. All right. All those in favor of adopting the declaration on social connectedness and isolation, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. We have a declaration.
We will bring it forward in December with the community partners again to sign. And thank you.
Yay. We did it. Okay, we moved to number 7. So now the new number 7, Board of Health Subcommittee updates. Jacqueline.
So, I just have some quick, brief updates, but I do invite any of the members on the subcommittee to chime in to add anything. So our policy subcommittee, we met on Friday, and we discussed potential policy topics and whether the Board of Health has authority over those topics. One of the things that they did express interest in is septic expansion in Thurston County, and any cross-jurisdictional policies related to housing and homelessness.
Septic expansion? What does that mean?
Yeah, Ty, will you speak to that? I'm not sure. I didn't necessarily understand that as an expansion. I just thought it was more so.
Addressing septic expansion is like probably what you meant. Looking at ways to address compliance with state law, with inspections and operational certificates, making sure septics are healthy. There's proposals to expand our current programs, which are limited to shellfish protection districts and complex systems to all shoreline property owners.
Oh, okay.
Or staff has different ideas about it, but whether to elevate that discussion to the Board of Health is one of the things we're looking at. Housing and homelessness is where we really got into kind of a circle of like, did we have the authority to do what it is that, and again, we brainstormed amongst the subcommittee, but we also asked for staff input. So we were looking at a whole series of topics, some of which came from our housing staff, but we weren't sure. We're going to be checking in with legal to get a sense of whether or not this is a topic that, I don't want to waste the Board of Health's time on a topic that it doesn't actually have authority to take action on.
Yeah.
So we're still working on tying some loose ends up there.
Okay, so our data subcommittee, our EPI team had identified that data sharing was a challenge in order for them to do the work that they need to do. And so the subcommittee has also identified that as a potential thing that they would like to address and pursue. So the policy program manager, myself, is going to reach out to local health jurisdictions to see what they're doing in terms of data sharing, if they have anything we could, or the board can steal, essentially, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Another thing that came out of the data subcommittee was an interest for the board to review the health equity report. The members of that subcommittee would like the board as a whole to read that health equity report, speak to a couple of community members about the report, and then come back to the next meeting as a whole board to kind of share out what those conversations look like.
We expect that health equity report to be available
When
later
it's done.
this month.
When it's done. Would you like to add anything?
It should be available later this month, so we may
We'll work on a timeline and
share it with the board maybe in December, since we don't have a meeting in November, hopefully.
Okay, so our education and outreach subcommittee has identified social isolation and loneliness as something they would like to tackle. Specifically, they are interested in engaging seniors in our community and to make those connections in the community and improve their quality of life. They've also directed me to gather information on how PHSS currently engages in education and outreach activities so that the subcommittee can kind of build on that work. And then they also invited a partner from 211 to attend their next meeting to speak to kind of what 211 looks like in Thurston County and what can we do in support of 211.
All right. Any comments on the work of the committees? Well, moving and shaking on the committees, so it's exciting. Thank you, Jacqueline. Next item on our agenda, open discussion on information sharing. Any upcoming events or exciting news to share?
I do have one thing.
Go ahead.
Okay. And I brought this up during our agenda setting this morning. I was quite surprised when I had a citizen contact me and say, you see on TV all these health related ads. If you test and you have COVID, and if you can get the prescription for COVID within the 5 days, that'll lessen that exposure to the rest of the public and all that. Well, I had a citizen get a hold of me and said that they got a prescription when they were tested positive, and they went to fill the prescription, and the cost of the prescription was over $1,000. And then that was confirmed by the folks from the health department that, yes, indeed, that's how much that prescription could cost. And when we talk about equity, I don't know who gets the $1,000 prescription, but I'll bet it's not homeless folks or those that are barely making it. So I just bring that up to the board to realize that here we're trying to do things beneficial in the community and maybe stop an epidemic, but yet the cost of stopping that is out of control, and the folks that probably need it the most can't get it. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting point. I think Paxlovid is the name of the medicine you're probably referring to that's very expensive. I was seeing some head nods from some of our folks that work in the medical community that prescription drug, especially if you don't have insurance coverage, probably is very expensive. I think it speaks to the Board of Health and the public health office's role in providing access to vaccines, because we've tried to make COVID-19 vaccines and boosters available and low cost or free. I think they're still free everywhere. I may be privileged because I'm covered by health insurance.
All that funding ended
I
no
don't
longer
think
for the
they're
medication as well as the vaccines.
They're for our state universal purchase, so if you're under 19,
Okay.
free technically, but I think adults not.
But yeah, if you're seeking to get the Paxlovid, if you already have COVID and
Very
you're
insurance
experiencing,
dependent.
there's a huge up and down if you have insurance or not. That's a good call out. Like it is an inequity that people without insurance coverage who may not, have insurance coverage through their employer might be on the hook for an extremely expensive medicine and just not be able to get it.
How about partners like Seymour? I know they offer, I'm looking towards.
Well, I think regardless of age, if you're eligible for state health insurance, it's covered. So it's people who are uninsured, and then it's people who have private insurance who have big copays.
And Seymour does not take anyone who's not on state health care?
Yeah.
So.
And this is true of any given medication out there, right? It's not just Paxlovid.
Yeah. I mean, it may throw into sharp relief the benefit of doing outreach to lower income groups that might not be covered through Apple Health, that might be eligible if they only knew that those programs were available to them. Like Apple Health is our state's version of Medicaid, and if you have Medicaid, you should have access to the medicine that you need at a reduced price. Good discussion. Anybody have anything else to share?
Yeah, I just recently went to the Washington State Association.
Sulfo.
Yeah. For local public health organizations. And they had a conference, and it was a really great experience to participate in that. I also did a ride-along, I think Gretchen left, with a family nurse practitioner yesterday. And that was amazing. It was really cool to see them at work and those social connections. And yeah, it was a really awesome experience. And then I did an ice cream social with a special recreation team, and beautiful weather, and it was a great time. So yeah.
Thank you. right. Well, last item on our agenda before we adjourn, Health Officer and Department Interim Director report. Hello, Dr. A.
Hello, good evening. I just wanted to highlight in my report that we did put in some information around COVID testing accuracy, which was asked at last meeting, and the FDA has accuracy thresholds for approval for testing. So all of the antigen tests are more than 80% accurate. And there's a very low chance of false positives, but if you test negative, it might not be a true negative. So that's why there's that recommendation for serial testing. So I just wanted to highlight that in my that response in my report. And I also just wanted to share one more thing about Paxlovid is that Pfizer, while it's not a perfect solution, Pfizer does have a copay program for eligible folks through their website, which can also lower costs for folks who qualify. So just one additional support there. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question. In your report, you mentioned that there are 9 cases of pertussis. Is that Thurston County? Are those 9 cases in Thurston County?
Yes, those were all in Thurston County.
Do you know what the rest of the state looks like? Is it a rising problem everywhere?
So we did see increased pertussis transmission in the state. So I think that when we looked at the data, and I can definitely do a deeper dive in state data, but during the COVID pandemic, when folks were masking, there was a dip in pertussis transmission, and now we're seeing an uptick post last year and this year. So far, the numbers that we're seeing for pertussis in Thurston County are not at, so we've seen numbers like this and higher prior to the pandemic in our county. I think one of the reasons that we're calling attention to it is because we can't detect diseases that we don't test for. And so some of our hope is that by sharing, this is a communicable disease update, raising awareness that this is, in our community and sharing what the symptomology is, that we can support our healthcare providers and including pertussis on their differential for appropriate patients and testing, so we can get a clearer picture of what the burden of pertussis is in our county. I hope that's helpful. So long story short, these are Thurston County numbers. They're higher than they were during the pandemic, but not as high as they had been in some years pre-pandemic. And the state is also seeing an increase in cases.
Okay, thank you.
And I had to train my younger partners who've never seen whooping cough about what questions to ask to pick up on whooping cough, because I saw that they had seen the patient and then I saw them and was like, uh-oh, test positive, and they had missed it. And so it's just, if you haven't seen it before, it can be tricky because they come in and look perfect when you see them. If you don't see them do a coughing spell, which they might do like 3 times a day. So if you ever see anyone who coughs for like a minute and a half, turns red, can't breathe, and either vomits or goes, they probably have whooping cough. So, and we treat them not because we can get them better quicker, but because then they don't spread it to other people, including little babies who then get hospitalized. And then the Tdap, the current whooping cough vaccine doesn't work as well as the old one, which used to cause really bad side effects. So we don't get the side effects anymore, but that's why we have to boost like every 10 years, is because you kind of get toward that waning protection, and then you might get whooping cough even though you've had the vaccine.
Thank you. Learned a new phrase. You should see your healthcare provider for antibiotic chemoprophylaxis. Fancy way of saying take a drug so you don't spread it to other people. Okay, anything from the interim director?
Nope, it's in the report. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. I think we've reached the end of our agenda. We covered a tremendous amount of ground, and I might still make my next meeting if we could adjourn right now. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.